Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're in the world. This is Augie of the Blago Blabber Podcast. I'd like to welcome everyone back to a new segment, session, episode, whatever you want to call it. Obviously, might know why I'm here today. Huge trade today in the NBA involving James Harden. He's finally been, I guess you can say, set free from Houston to Brooklyn. Man, this is going to be interesting. So I just wanted to come on here and kind of talk about the trade and what each team got and what they should look forward to and stuff like that. This segment is going to be pretty much based around that. You know, news breaks. Harden's traded. We hear Brooklyn. First thing I thought right away was Kyrie Irving, especially with what has gone on or transpired in last I would say day or two, but you can look at it in like the last week and a half. I thought for sure it was Kyrie Irving. But then I thought, Kyrie doesn't make any sense in Houston with John Wall there. And then, you hear that there's possibly another team involved. There's 3 or 4 teams involved. And you're like, maybe it is Kyrie after all. They ship off Kyrie somewhere else and, the other teams kind of get it going with the players, draft picks, and things like that. But that didn't happen. So we saw Rockets, Pacers, Cavs, and Nets. So I'll try to look at this from, I guess, like each team's perspective and like what they got and stuff like that. With the Cavs getting Jared Allen, it's a funky move. I feel like they have a lot of centers and point guards on that team. They get Jared Allen. They already have Drummond, JaVale McGee, and Tom Maker, who doesn't play much at all. But it's 3 big men in like today's NBA, where a lot of teams don't even use big men. So it's very interesting. So one of my friends actually said today, when I said, they got Jared Allen, whatever, we're talking about it. We're like, what's the point of them getting Jared Allen? And he said something along the lines of to create spacing for Andre Drummond because he takes threes now and stuff like that. So that was interesting. That had me rolling. Shout out to him. He knows who he is. So in terms of them, not sure why they did it. I could honestly see them trading someone at some point in the season. Like Jared Allen can be a good piece on another team where he's like a 3rd or 4th scorer. Maybe not even 3rd, 4th scorer, but he can rebound, he can block some shots, he can get, like alley-oops and stuff like that. He's like your prototypical big man from like the 90s, 2000s. He can play for like a title contending team. He can play for the Lakers. Apart from, and Marc Gasol is getting older, but and I don't want to go too off track here, but he can play for the Lakers. He can start, maybe even come off the bench. He can definitely come off the bench. I think he could start with his length and stuff like that. And he'd be a good player to have for a team that doesn't have like a center. You need like energy, kind of like what JaVale, I guess, provided the Lakers with last year, but he offers you a little bit more offensively, and he's just a rebounding machine as well. He had something like 17 and 16 the other night, I guess. Crazy numbers. So in terms of Cleveland, I think that's what they're kind of getting at, where they might just hold on to Jared Allen. I think this is the last year of his contract. I'm not 100% sure. Or they could trade Andre Drummond, who I think read up anyways, and like JaVale McGee or Tom Maker, and like release them or trade them or do something. So that's kind of Cleveland's perspective in the trade. Indiana Pacers, after what Oladipo said last season and about wanting out and playing with other guys, I'm honestly surprised it took them this long to trade him. As soon as news like that gets out, if I was a GM, I'd have him on the first flight out of Indiana. Like, that's just unprofessional. His team isn't that bad. Like, you got Sabonis, you got Brogdon, Miles Turner. Like, it's a pretty good team. Like, it's a top 4 or 5 team in the East. I don't really get what that was about. But like I said, LeVert is a little bit younger, maybe a little bit more upside. And playing with guys like Brogdon, like, he's not going to have much, I don't want to say no pressure on him, but like Sabonis is putting up crazy numbers this season. So he's kind of like the go-to guy. And Miles Turner is a great defensive player, and he's someone I think Boston should have acquired last season or the off season. I think we would have made a lot of sense on that team. And he's just like your 15 and 10 guy who can block shots. I think that's something that they needed. So I'm surprised they didn't go for him. And Brogdon is great defensively. He can shoot threes, gets guys involved. I really like what Indiana's doing there. Again, I think it's a little better fit than Oladipo. And Oladipo has some injuries. To be fair, LeVert had a scary injury a few seasons ago as well. But Oladipo maybe a little bit more recently. And again, with what he said in the offseason, I guess the news broke that he kind of wanted out of Indiana. Surprised it just didn't happen earlier, I guess. But trades like that don't happen right away anymore. Like, teams look for the best deals, and then sometimes they look for a third team, and then they just want to milk it for everything and more than what they really deserve for that one player. But I like that move. They have a solid starting five. Their bench is okay. They could finish top. They could finish anywhere from, I think they could finish anywhere from third to like 6th, 7th in the East. And they could surprise you in the playoffs. You never know in the playoffs. Like, I mean, Miami Heat made it to the finals last season, so as a 5th seed. Houston Rockets. 3 Brooklyn first-round picks. 2022, 24, 26. 1 Milwaukee first-rounder, which is next year, 22, unprotected. 4 Brooklyn first-round swaps in 21, 23, 25, 27. This is kind of what teams nowadays get for a star player in the league. I'm still old school. Like, I want full value for the superstar player I'm trading. So if this was up to me, let's say Wall was on this team, it would have to be like Kyrie Irving, maybe Jared Allen, and a first round pick for James Harden or something along the lines of that. Like, I'm old school. I don't like this whole, we'll send you James Harden and we'll send you 7 picks, 3 first round, and then like 4 swaps. I'm just old school like that. And I think NBA is going back to kind of like that style where it's like superstar for superstar. Like, I know when a lot of people talk trades nowadays, a lot of it is like superstar for superstar. At least the rumors are. You never know what really happens. So I think Houston got kind of what I don't want to say actually maybe it is what OKC's been getting, just not the quantity of picks, but it's like, I guess, the quality of picks, if you want to call it that, where it's like milking teams for whatever they have. And I think that's probably the best they could have done. And they got Oladipo. So you got Oladipo and John Wall in the backcourt there. And look, they have I mentioned it either on a podcast or on my YouTube channel before. Like, it's a solid squad of guys. Like, there's a lot of guys trying to prove themselves here. Like John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, Coach Silas. I feel bad for Coach Silas because he's kind of dealt with this whole situation in the last like month and a half since Harden kind of came out, and there were rumors that he wanted out. But like, it can't get any tougher for him than this. Like, it's not going to get tougher than this for him as a coach, maybe ever, let alone in your first month on the job. And this is like the hardest, probably the toughest thing that you're going to run into. It's like when you do a test and the first question is the hardest question in the entire test, and everything after that is like, it's a little bit difficult, but the first one was like the hardest question. And this is kind of like that. Like, I don't know if he's gonna have a player like James Harden ever again. Who knows? Depending on how long he coaches. But I like what they've done this season. Like, James Harden's missed a bunch of games. Wall's missed some. They've had some issues with like coronavirus and stuff like that. But it's just a bunch of guys trying to prove themselves, like I said. It's a bunch of bench guys. Like, you have a guy like PJ Tucker. So let's say you're out of the playoff race, or if they're not where they want to be, like if they're kind of close to that playing game or whatever, you can trade PJ Tucker for like a rotation guy, maybe like a 2nd round pick. You can always do something with Boogie Cousins, who's picking up technicals and getting tossed out of games. John Wall's actually looked really good this season. I think he has, at least. Coming off a catastrophic injury. Like, you got Oladipo now. You have Christian Wood, who is in running for, most improved player. Really solid pickup there. So So you have a solid team of guys here. And they're just going to, and like, it's less distractions now. And Boogie made some interesting comments today, with the group and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see where Houston goes from here. Look, they could win 20 games for all I know. But at least you're going to have guys out there trying and giving it their all. And, Harden literally drove himself out of Houston. Like, he put on weight. He's just not scoring anymore. Just doesn't look like he really cared anymore. You know what I mean? And that's tough. Like, you still try to be a professional. Like, I know you want out, but you still got to be a professional. And for sure, he rushed the process, 100%. If he didn't say what he said last night at the press conference, I think he's a Houston Rocket today. I really do believe that. I don't think they would have traded him. And I kind of woke up this morning, and a lot of the NBA guys who cover the NBA for many years, like Marcus Spears and those guys, and they're throwing out like trade scenarios, and I was like, man, this is going to get done. I actually tweeted out, I'm like, this is going to get done in like the next few days for sure. Because it kind of stopped with Harden. There weren't that many, packages, I guess, that people were kind of putting together out on Twitter. Like, when I say Twitter, I mean guys who kind of work for the NBA and cover the NBA. It kind of stopped, and then today it kind of picked up. I woke up and it was like every hour, half hour, there was like guys, well, he might go here, and if Kyrie and then Simmons from Philly, and what is Boston going to do? Are they going to include Jaylen Brown in any Harden talks and stuff like that? So I was kind of like, yeah, this is probably going to be it. He's probably going to get traded in the next 2 days, and little did I know that he'd get traded in probably 2 or 3 hours after all the tweets came out. So I think Houston kind of did the best that they could. I think the picks are going to be huge down the road, depending on what happens. Like some of these 25 and 27, even 24 and 26, like depending on if Durant and I guess Irving and these guys re-up in with the Nuggets, with the Nets. The picks could be huge. A lot of them are unprotected, so that's good for them. They don't have to worry about that. Now, to the final team, the Brooklyn Nets. Like, they have to win now. Like, I'm someone who maybe beats around the bush and says, well, yeah, maybe they'll have next year. No, they have to win now. They have 5 free agents next season from their current roster. 1 player, so 5 free agents. 1 player has a player option, which is Dinwiddie. So he has a player option. And a lot of people are forgetting, like, when the trade happened, I'm like, man, like, the Nets really gutted their entire roster for this. And then I go online and look at the roster, I'm like, okay, so they gave up Karis LeVert, Jared Allen. So let's say those are 2 of their 5 best players prior to the trade. So if you have it as KD, Kyrie, you can have Harris ahead of LeVert or whatever, and then you have Jared Allen. So they got rid of 2 of their 5 best players, so to say. Let's say 2 or 4. Let's not include Dinwiddie because it wouldn't be fair. He's injured. And there's still, like, there's guys on this team. Like, there's Tyler Johnson, take it for what it's worth. I know he's not that great. Like, they kept Joe Harris. Joe Harris is a sniper from 3. Landry Shamet, if he could hit a few threes, if he could get to that 30, I don't know what he's shooting this year, but if he could be a 38 to, like, 40, 41% three-point shooter. Timothy Luau, if he can play a little bit defense, hit threes. Bruce Brown's productivity should go up now. He's going to get more minutes. He had a really good end to last season with Detroit, I believe it was. And, like, sure, they gave up some guys, but they didn't gut their entire roster as I thought they would. They have DeAndre Jordan at center. They have Jeff Green, a savvy veteran. Like, there's still guys on this team. Robert Perry, I think, from Mississippi State is on this team, so he's going to get more minutes now with less big guys. Like, guys are going to be playing a lot, man. And with Kyrie gone, like, a lot of these guys that I mentioned are obviously on 2s, shooting guards. And there's some small forwards as well. But, man, like, this team could be really scary. Really scary, even after the trade. Man, after I looked at it, I was like, wow, like, they kept a lot of their pieces. Like, sure, they gave up. They gave up Taurean Prince as well. I believe went to Cleveland, I think. So, like, yeah, they gave up a lot, but they still kept a lot of their pieces, man. Like, DeAndre Jordan, their starting 5, let's just say, is DeAndre Jordan, KD, Joe Harris, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving. There's not much defense, I get it. Which is kind of like why people said, like, maybe you shouldn't have traded Jared Allen, or if they could have kept Karis LeVert. Although Karis LeVert isn't, like, exactly the best 2-way player in the league, but, like, I get what they're saying. man, they have a lot of pieces. They can outscore teams. Like, we always say you have to play, like, defense wins championships, but this might be, like, the one year where maybe defense doesn't win. You just outscore the opponent, like, 130 to 128, and you end up winning. So this is a very interesting, like, now you got 3 personalities in that locker room. Steve Nash is a first-year head coach. I'm curious to see how he deals with this. And this whole Kyrie thing, holy cow. I was thinking about it earlier today. I said this James Harden trade was almost a safety net for the Nets, just in case Kyrie, doesn't come back. And you still have 2 superstars in James Harden and Kevin Durant, who have obviously played together before in OKC. And they could kind of rekindle that flame there, if you want to say, playing together. And I think they've played for US basketball and like all-star games and stuff like that. So it's not like they're strangers to each other or anything like that. So this team is going to be tough, whether they have Kyrie or not. And I hear there's some rumors that like Brooklyn could potentially buy Kyrie out or something like that. Man, they're still very good. They're just going to have to... I still think you have to have at least 2 or 3 defenders on the team. So if you want to include KD in that, you can. Harden has been known to buckle down, I guess, on defense when he needs to. He's just going to have to shed some weight because he's looking a little thick. And then Kyrie, I think if need be, he can give you something on the defensive end. But like DeAndre Jordan can block shots. Jeff Green is a savvy veteran who can defend. He can hit threes. Like I said, Joe Harris can hit threes. Maybe just a little bit of defending, and like there's still trades that could be made. Like they could still dangle other guys, which I don't know how much you're gonna get back for. I'm assuming they're not gonna trade like Joe Harris or anything like that. But this whole Kyrie situation, maybe they trade Kyrie. You never know. Maybe a team bites, and they could take on a salary. But I actually really like this from the Nets. When I first heard it, I was like, I don't know about that. It's a lot to give up. It really was. But I like this from, I think, Brooklyn's position the most. Houston, I like it. Pacers were okay, and then Cleveland's like, whatever. So it's interesting. I'm glad this saga's over. Like, this had to end at some point. I figured it wouldn't make it up until like February, March. February maybe, but March, I said, there's no way. This isn't going until, I don't even know when the trade deadline is, but there's no way this is going until the trade deadline, especially after last night. He said, James Harden saying can't repair the partnership, friendship, or whatever it was in Houston. Man, it's that 8 years gone. So hopefully he'll have better luck with the Nets, and they're gonna challenge, man. Like I think this is probably a 2-team race, I would say, between the Nets and the Celtics. If the Celtics can get up, like I know they got Tristan Thompson, but if they could get another big man, kind of like I was saying with Miles Turner, if they could get another big man, they could be really good. And they just need Kemba healthy. Jaylen Brown's playing out his mind. Tatum's really good. They have a solid bench. Peyton Pritchard and those guys, they can ball. Marcus Smart, once he's back, have a really good team. And I think Brooklyn and the Celtics are going to be the favorites coming out of the East. My Raptors are far behind, but that's okay. So that's basically it for today's podcast. I just wanted to kind of talk about that trade. And it made sense because, it's a big trade in the NBA, and it kind of tilts the odds to the Nets. I don't know if the Nets were favored to win the East prior to this trade, but now you got to think that they're up there. They're probably number 1 if all 3 guys are ready to go. So that's it for today's podcast. Thank you guys for listening. Stay safe. Let me know who you think won the trade, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.